Of mixing measures, which might become a regular thing if we are not careful. And today I am back with Nancy Giacalone, the founder and CEO of Olympic Crest Insurance. And our guest today is Jennifer Stanley of Stanley Cup Consulting. And she is our compliance guru. And we are a little late because we were having a very heated discussion about premium holidays, which we're going to get to in a minute. But we are going to start today with the 4 horsemen of compliance. And I think the best place to start is, what are the 4 horsemen of compliance?
Well, so thank you for the introduction, Jennifer Stanley. And I actually just want to clarify 4 horsemen of transparency. Transparency, because compliance, oh my gosh, who knows how many, it's like a whole cavalry of compliance things out there. With transparency, though, I've called them the 4 horsemen because the power that is wielded with them. For example, we have Section 201, which is the gag clause prohibition. Section 202 is what? The service provider comp disclosure. Section 203 is MAPIA's NQTL, which really gets to the network adequacy and the behind the scenes goings on. And then Section 204 is the pharmacy claims data reporting. So those 4 things straight out of not the heavens, perhaps the gates of hell, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. But those 4 things are so powerful, and they're new and they're a little scary. But those are the 4 horsemen of transparency from the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the gag clause last, even though it is Section 201, because I think we're going to spend a lot of time there. That's the new and upcoming horseman, so to speak. Let's talk about the first 3. So RxDC reporting, NQTL audits, and broker compensation. Which one would you like to take on first?
Nancy, what do you want to hear? What does our audience say?
I think I would like to hear about RxDC reporting first, and I would love for you to explain what it is, why it is, and who has to worry about it.
Okay, great. So RxDC reporting, we are in this will be our 4th reference here to report. It is applicable to, really all plans. Now, whether you're an employer that has a fully insured plan or a level funded or self-insured, that's going to depend on the responsibility. I used to think, when this all was coming up out of the midst, that our fully insured plan sponsors wouldn't really have much to do with this, because the RxDC reporting is getting to the cost of coverage. So on a per capita cost, what does each belly button cost based on the contribution structure and based on the total cost of the plan, based on there's fixed costs that are reported, and then there's some claims. There's a claims file that talks about and breaks down what's in network, what's out of network, what was attributed to the hospital or specialty drugs in the sense of part of the medical spend. So medical claims is one whole data file boiled down into, I think, 6 rows. Lots of information there, though. And then the last data files 3 through 8, are pharmacy. So that's where the RX comes from, the pharmacy data collection. And that, if people only knew what was in that data, it's powerful. And I keep saying that, but it is. It's rebates. Were the rebates given at the point of service? Were they given to the plan? Were they kept by the PBM or the carrier? What was the top most expensive drugs by order? What was spread pricing? These are such vital pieces of the puzzle that the employer plan sponsor, especially in our self-insured, has every right and should want to see that information. What happens is, this is irony, but the carriers, TPAs, PBMs, right, they'll say, no, we'll do it for you. We will file on your behalf. Remember, RxDC, we will file on your behalf. So you don't have to worry about it. Now, you might need to tell us your contribution split because we don't know that. So we're going to cause a lot of heartache for you to figure that out. Once we get that, we'll file and we'll move on down the road. The problem with that is they're filing at state level and the market segment level. Whereas if the employer were to do it themselves or outsource, they would get to see their granular information. Granularly, how much is being spent on these pharmaceuticals? Are the rebates what the contract says they are? I don't know. You don't either if you don't get to see your data. So that's RxDC in a nutshell, and it is pretty shocking how much employers, and I don't know who our audience is, but I don't really care, equal opportunity offender here. Even brokers are like, hands off. No, in fact, I think brokers kind of led the charge to get some TPAs and PBM, probably not PBMs, but some TPAs to change their position on it. I think originally, like last year or the year before, they were going to put the onus on the employer. And brokers kind of freaked out. No, don't do that. And I'm sitting here like, y'all shut it. We want this to be in the hands of the employer, don't we? Don't we want the employer to see in real sense their claims data? And if it was allocated properly, isn't that a great way to do a full-blown claims audit, which will bring us to the gag clause, but we'll hold off on that one.
I want to pull out a couple of things you said there. In the necessary reporting for RxDC, it is called the RxDC report, but it is not just pharmacy. You need to provide claims data as well,
claims data.
Correct?
Data file D2.
Yep, data file D2, and there are 8 of them. You also need to provide a narrative. We have forced, strongly encouraged our clients that they need to write their own narratives, or if for some of our larger clients, we have a consultant that helps us with that, that the consultant is writing the narrative with the employer's approval. How do you feel about other people writing an employer's narrative?
Well, if it's the TPA or PBM or the carrier writing their narrative, it says a whole bunch of nothing. Essentially, it says a whole bunch of nothing. And so, that there is again opportunity for the employer, plan sponsor, fiduciary, that F word. I know it's my favorite word around here. That fiduciary opportunity to know what's going on in your plan, and then let's just say you don't know what's going on in your plan because perhaps maybe you're gagged from knowing what's going on in your plan. Don't you think this is a perfect opportunity to free-form your grievances to the departments, which have a legal statutory they are obligated to read those things, synthesize them, and then publish them for public consumption. So there's a lot of power in the narrative as well. Those claims data, the first claims data I received from a TPA, because I asked for it on an employer-specific level, it came back as out of network with $0, and I think there was maybe an average of $100 out of pocket. I was like, can you please sign me up for that plan? Please, can I be on that plan? Yep. It was just so farcical. This can't be accurate. So they sent us something back, and I don't know if it was true or not because it was still the summary information. So my hope is that employers will start truly taking advantage and pressing for those full claims data files and feeds.
So who at the government level is reviewing the RxDC reporting, and what are they doing with it? So we understand that the advantage that it potentially can bring to the employer, or the employer that's savvy enough to understand that that's an opportunity for them. A large majority of them do not. I'm going to be really crystal clear with you about that. They just don't. They're still overwhelmed with all their compliance pieces anyway. And then they're like, I have to do what?
Right.
But who's using that data other than the employer should be using it?
Yeah, so this is going to go, the tri-agencies are taking this information, again, making sense of it. And I think it's again, transparency. This is all under the transparency provisions of the CAA. So all of these things are really going to pull the curtain back. That is the goal. We have been opining for years over the rising cost of coverage and how, it's the Wizard of Oz sitting behind the curtain having coffee with, I don't know, Dr. Seuss. I mean, it's just a mess, right? So this is the opportunity to bring that to the forefront. The data that the agencies received, though, this past year was atrocious. I mean, especially on that premium contribution split, it was a mess. So to the extent they want to be able to tell per capita what it costs for such and such plan, it's going to be impossible. The numbers were horrible. Other things will show you've got hospital claims and you've got specialist types of claims data information. So they'll be able to use that. They'll be able to take those point of service codes and see, our hospital's buying up all the physicians' practices. These things we know to be true. And at the end of the day, more regulation is going to come from it because people aren't getting their act together.
We have a question in the chat from Nick Leese, who I think is a friend of us all. Says, would it be fair to say that if plan sponsors have a solid plan in place to address and take action on these 4 specific compliance areas, it will all but assure they are meeting their fiduciary responsibility?
For these things, absolutely. I mean, the fiduciary responsibility is huge, but that's what's so great about the 4 horsemen. These are action specific items that the employer, Nancy, you asked whose responsibility. Most of this is on the plan sponsor, the plan to do. So it's their plan. They have the responsibility to do it. And I would say that if they're not doing these things, then it's a real big abdication and just gear up, man. Litigation's coming.
So we've been telling people that we understand that this is a pain and our clients are in pretty good shape. Not all of them, but most of them are in quite good shape, actually. But somebody is going to get made an example of, I think. And my stance is that it's not my clients, right? And it's not going to be Nancy's clients. And Jennifer, obviously, it's not going to be your clients. But what is going to happen if you fail to meet this obligation?
Fail to meet these obligations, depends on which horse we're riding. All right. Mm-hmm. So let's take RxDC for that one. Employers will just say, well, I'm not going to do it. Right. So what if we always get the employers, well, I'm not going to do it. Sue me. Or what are my penalties? How will they know? On the RxDC reporting, very easy to know who's doing what, because to the credit of whoever built HIOS, and the files, they're all matched by the EIN of the plan sponsor. So even if the plan name is wrong, whatever, that EIN is correct, you're matching 8 data files across however many different vendors submitted the information. Really easy to tell if there's a data file missing. Or
could you go back for a second and explain what HIOS is?
So HIOS is the Health Insurance Oversight portal. It is primarily used for carriers. Carriers, I believe, are very familiar with HIOS. If y'all think back to 2013-14 out of PPACA, ACA, there was this provision where all self-insured employer plan sponsors were going to need to get a HIOS number. Okay, I don't know if y'all remember that, but we had to watch some HIOS trainings, and that was because they are the plan, right? They're the plan. They scratched that. Okay, but it's still for the carriers at large. HIOS is where they put RxDC reporting. I will say HIOS is also a portal used for the gag clause attestation, but do not let vendors, and I am a vendor now, do not let vendors fool you into thinking that the HIOS of the gag clause is the same as the HIOS of the RxDC. They are not. And in the situation of paying for a service, the gag clause attestation is very simple to attest. Do I think you should attest? We can get there later. But it's simple. Anyone can do it. HIOS RxDC, it's not difficult, it's invasive. You have to do a soft credit check. Okay, and you have to have like 2 or 3 other people do one with you. How fun is that? So it's a pain. So for that service, it is worth finding, a vendor. If you're a broker, make sure E&O covers it, because it's not really sales of insurance at all. So just be careful on that front, and then understand what you're paying for too. So again, if you don't get to see the data or even your own data files that are submitted, it makes me wonder what you're paying for.
Correct.
I would love to address the mental health parity and NQTL testing, because we actually had to do that first. We did that before we did our first RxDC. But before we get there is another question from Aaron Isaac, another friend of all of ours, who says many employers are overwhelmed just renewing their medical renewal and planning open enrollment. Getting buy-in to want to review the granular data is tough. We're still fighting the legacy mentality of the carrier should do it all for me. Well, we've all seen where that's gotten us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly. A 10% double-digit increase to then get negotiated down to a slightly less than a double-digit percent increase. So, and it's so funny because we all want the carrier or the broker to do it, and yet we're still going to gripe and complain because the rising cost in care. And it's one of those things is care, yes, healthcare is getting more expensive, but there's a lot to be said for all these hidden fees that are also contributing to the rising cost of care. No, it's the cost of doing business, and that's unfortunate. And is that, here we go, the F word, as a fiduciary, is it reasonable to pay these expenses to play the game? Well, how do you know if you don't know what the expenses are or the fees? That's another one of our horsemen. But the NQTL, the reason that's important is it pulls the curtain back on those behind the scenes shenanigans that we've all experienced, right? We've all experienced a runaround in a prior auth or in whatever. So to sit here and get a report card from the TPA or carrier that says, no, nothing to see here, straight A student, right? It's kind of why would you take their word for it? Grade their paper. And so, Aaron, to the point of they're overwhelmed, I think that's where we come in as consultants and advisors. And sometimes, maybe it's just say, you don't need to sort through all this stuff, but you need to make the request. And that is huge. Make the request.
Yes. And see what happens. I think that
see what
tells
the
you.
response is. And that is something you document to then forward on to the agencies if needed.
And I know you've probably seen the same thing, Allison, and of course you have, Jennifer, but I mean, the first NQTL report I got back, because I paid for somebody to do it for, my client paid for them to do it. I was surprised at all the little details that they picked out that were, I mean, I would not have been able to pick those details out if I had been doing the analysis myself, because they didn't stand out clearly enough to me. And so we modified contracts to adjust and take care of those things.
It is, but what's going to happen, and it is happening. So I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth. We've had 2 or 3 big plans get hit from the NQTL point on the autism and eating disorders. And so you take one mama who gets upset, right, because the plan's not covering something, files a complaint, and now the DOL is in your plan. Okay. And will they do the whole analysis? Probably not, but they'll find that because that's easy to find. And they'll keep asking. And when the agency comes back and says to Congress that not a single plan has passed, then for the TPA's response to be, we all pass, doesn't work. I'm sorry, that those two things are mutually exclusive.
And of course, you have different rules in different states because out here in Washington, being a very liberal state, we have some provisions that are not in other areas of the country, specifically relating to gender affirming treatments or gender reassignment. And that's mandated in Washington state. And so the contracts have to not have anything that takes away from that.
Well, there's a plug for Washington State and the rising cost of care.
Yep. I think people forget that. The more things you cover everything, then you pay more. And that's okay. And as long as you know what you're paying for, that's okay. But understand what you're paying for.
Well, it's like when you buy a new car and they want to sell you the extended warranty that includes the oil changes and everything. The more that's covered, the more you pay on top of the privilege of owning a car. It's kind of the same thing with your health plan. The more you layer on there, the more you're going to pay.
Yes.
And here's the thing with the NQTL analysis. I'm curious. So you get the analysis and there's points, right? There are failures. We know there are. From a human level, we know there are failures. Some of it's just clarity, right? But when the idea is that the employer goes back, or the broker goes back and has the TPA remedy that, which is the same thing the DOL does. They go back and they say, no, you remedy, and they will, to the tune of $500,000 to backtrack some of those benefits that were improperly denied, right? And so if they remedy those mistakes, that is, to me, that's a decent TPA or a decent PBM or a decent carrier. But if they're just going to put their foot in the ground, then I think there's more opportunity out there to find someone else who is really, interested in transparency and not just posturing. And
I think, to me, transparency is almost code word for fairness, right? You have to have a fair agreement, and many of the agreements that the RxDC reporting and the GAG clause attestation and the NQTL audit are uncovering, and the broker compensation, quite frankly, they're unfair business practices.
Some might even say deceptive.
Imagine that.
Yes. The other thing too is you can't be transparent if you don't have all the information.
Right.
If you're only providing or receiving partial information, that is not transparency.
Right. That's you making it say whatever it is you want it to say.
Correct.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So let's talk for a second about broker compensation disclosures and how do you feel? So my big beef with broker compensation disclosures are the statements that say, we're paid this and this and this. And oh, by the way, we might make a marketing bonus on some other things, but that doesn't affect your costs.
So I like calling them service provider comp disclosures. I know the style section 202 does say broker comp disclosure, but the actual statute talks about this. It brings in the ERISA service provider, which is very broad. Anyone who touches the plan is a service provider. And if people don't get their act together, there's legislation that's going to clarify who all is a service provider, and maybe more power to us. But this is huge from the employer. So everyone take note. This is big. Retirement side, right? Class action lawsuits going on these comp disclosures. Okay, so that is coming. That is now not coming. That is on the health and welfare side. If we had attorneys that were wise enough to realize what kind of we're wise enough to realize like this could be a gold mine, because here's what happens. You have the comp disclosure, the employer, plan sponsor is supposed to ask for it. It is on them. We help them out, right? I don't know much about Health Rosetta, but I'm going to give a plug to them. They're on it, right? And they have provided a broker with at least an apples to apples thing, so that it is line items to be modified, right? But they have this thing, every line of coverage, everywhere you can make money directly or indirectly at more than $1,000. Well, you get this, and if the employer doesn't get it, or if it doesn't make sense, they actually have a responsibility to request clarification. I'm sorry, what? can you refigure this in a way that makes sense and put, a reasonable dollar amount to it, or percentage or guesstimation, something, right? But this is so vague, and again, maybe misleading, so that I know if my fees are reasonable, so that I know if there are any conflicts of interest, so that I know these things, so that I can make the decision as a fiduciary for the benefit of who, not for the benefit of my broker, not for the benefit of my best friend who is also, owns the PBM or the TPA down the hall. No, for the benefit of my plan participants. Okay. If I don't do that, then this is huge, I have removed the prohibited transaction safe harbor. That's big. Prohibited transaction. That's big. That's class action right there. And so the power from a broker perspective is, hey, look, here's what we're making off of you. We work hard. We demonstrate our value. This is what we get. Go ask the competitor who's trying to undercut us, right? Apples to apples. Really bright legal minds are writing those comp disclosures for really big firms. Mm-hmm. Really big firms also have really good, powerful Excel spreadsheets, and probably know to the head how many people are enrolled in what. I don't know.
I know that personally, I just updated my broker comp this year because I felt like it didn't give people enough information. And so, because we're paid on a per employee per month basis on a lot of our clients. And so I said, this is what the number is per employee. But then I showed them the overall. I said, based on your current enrollment, this is what we anticipate to collect in revenue on your, and then I always explain, if enrollment goes down, our compensation goes down. If enrollment goes up, compensation goes up. And I also provide a disclosure in there that says, if in the event that we receive additional compensation from the carrier and you're included in it, you will receive another compensation statement from us. So they'll get a second one if maybe we get a retention bonus or something from a carrier, and then they get notified of that. Because I've always given them out. I mean, literally for 20 years, I've given them out, but they were just something I did because I thought people should know, like, how much we were making, because we don't work for free. And if they don't know that we're getting paid, they don't put value on the work that we do.
Correct. Right. Absolutely. And I think that's really admirable. And I think there will be, not admirable, well, it is that.
It's just what you should be doing. It's just the right thing.
And now it's the law.
Yeah.
So it's really funny to be in a position of consulting on compliance and thinking like, why haven't I seen a comp disclosure come out from them before? I don't know. What does that say? Oh, it says a whole bunch of nothing. Okay, employer, go ask for something that makes sense.
And that is an employer responsibility. And it is amazing to me that we've offered it for a few years now, and people are like, oh, and we make them sign it, right? And send it back to us. And they're like, whatever.
Yeah. And I would just push it even further. Go get your comp disclosure from your carrier, and encourage the employer to go get those things from all the hands that are touching that pie, right? So that way they can see if it's reasonable, and it might be reasonable, or if they need to, shop.
So I have one question. It's kind of tied to comp disclosures, and it's kind of tied to gag clauses. So I feel like gag clauses can be worked into any of these points, but one popular practice is to, especially in our industry with people doing a little bit more progressive work, is to charge employers based on a percentage of savings. So let's say they take them from a fully insured plan to a self-funded plan, and they're anticipating a delta of, I'm just going to make it super easy, $100,000. And they might have that of 25% of whatever savings are. It makes really good sense in the first year because you have a hard number. You had a hard renewal number, and that's easily calculated. But I have seen that in some instances, as that goes on, because there's not going to be as much savings in the next year because you've already created savings, that they're using numbers that don't necessarily mean anything. And to me, that also feels like you're not providing meaningful data.
So you're using a trend number to calculate what your cost would be if you haven't made any changes, and then you're using that as the delta for your actual plan.
Correct. How do you feel about that, Allison?
Yeah, Allison, how do you feel about that?
I am not a huge fan. I also find that we're a little bit of an anomaly in how we think we should be paid. We have a little bit more pricing flexibility than Washington State. So we're pretty clear, and we get paid this, and we're not the cheapest game in town. But we don't accept comp here, or here. And if we get it, we'll tell you.
Yep.
But we don't do the PBM thing. I know that there are brokers who take a per script fee for pharmacy and don't necessarily disclose that to their clients, or they take a fee out of some of the services of the plan. We do have a service that we use that for, but we do something for that. We don't just put it in and forget it. We take action for that. So I think that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? Is, okay, I've saved you $100,000. Well, for trend, you're now, let's say that your estimated savings are $110,000, but we don't know that. It's just an estimation, and our fee is based on the delta between your plan cost and that 110. And your head is going to pop off.
So I tell you, I made like a really bad salary before I was shared service. I've never, my up until like 1 year, my bonus was a fraction of a cost of living adjustment. Under the auspice of we don't have the funds, and now everywhere I turn, there are just, I don't know if is it a kick? It's not a kickback. Is it a pay to play?
It's lined out in the agreement that, so it's an upfront discussion. It's put out there. It's said to the client.
I know, but again,
save you so much money. But then, and it makes perfect sense in the first year. Like,
it does. I'm just saying in general, like the supposition that the cost of care is getting so much, and our employers are spending all this money on care, and at some point, it's like, what percentage of that goes to things that are marked up so that we can get a bigger cut of the pie? If we're not doing anything, right? I get it. Like, you bring in a good cost savings model, you earn that 25%.
Right.
That is real. The other is fiction.
Correct.
But my point is the 25% shouldn't be based on a number that we're guessing at.
No, it's fiction.
It should be
whatever number you want it to be.
If we did cost management or containment services on this number of dollars, and we're going to charge you X over above it, it should be on a figure that's inside of the plan. Absolutely. Or it should be something that's agreed upon upfront as far as a flat dollar figure or per employee per month. It should be something that's really clear. That number just always feels so nebulous to me. And that's one of the reasons that I asked the question is I'm not really sure how that all plays into the true transparency.
I don't think it does. And I think that's definitely, they're just closing it, I guess. Like, it's an agreement. Do I think, that's just check your.
And I want to circle back to what you said about checking all of your vendors, because we have another comment from Nick, who said that he was looking at a telehealth plan. It was 200% higher than he normally pays. And as he went through it, there was broker comp built into it.
Come on, guys.
Okay, but do you want to double the cost of something?
It's okay, but make sure they're just closing it. Now that you know that, if that's a prospect, this is a really great opportunity to present that Health Rosetta comp disclosure. One, for what you would, but two, like, let's do apples to apples, right? Let's take this, have your employer give this to their current broker and have them fill it out, right? And then see if that aligns with what's in a 5,500 what's wherever, right? What's in their agreements, or have them just read their agreements. I'm shocked at the number of dollars in rebates in these agreements right there. So transparent. Yes, it's overwhelming. Yes, but this is the employer's opportunity. This is the second largest line item that they're spending. I would think it would behoove them to get control of it in a sense that they can, is in their power. They are now empowered to do something.
Well, we just had the best comment, because we were talking about, this is what made us a minute or so late for the show. Yep. Nick also said, no bid offers are commonplace. What many don't know is it often comes with a broker bonus. Plus it gets another one off their plate. In other words, they can check the box and move on to the next client. Likely these bonuses are tied to no bid, are not disclosed, and B, is prohibiting the employer from being able to go to market, gagging them.
So yeah, so now, I mean, again, brokers are getting a lot of money, and I love brokers. I do. Like y'all,
I love brokers too.
We do, right? And I'm capitalist. We want people to make money. I just want to quit opining about the cost of coverage and wanting transparency, when if you want transparency and if you're opining about the cost of coverage, you broker having your power to do something about it, right? Or go public option. That's where we're headed. So with that no gag clause, so Nancy, you said that if the no bid offer is presented to the employer.
So for the example is, again, we'll just use the one we used earlier. So an employer gets a 15% renewal rate increase, and the carrier comes back and says, okay, if the client wants to accept a no bid offer, we'll give them a 9% rate increase. But if they accept that, they're saying, we're not going to go to market and look at anything else. Is that gagging the client, I think, is what Nick is asking. It's an interesting question.
It's definitely so. And in the terms, I can see how it could get there, directly, indirectly prohibiting. I don't know if it's the most definitely might not be in the best interest of the employer client, right? So gag clause in the sense of over here on prohibited, maybe directly, indirectly. But this really gets to the information, the de-identified claims, point of service, all of that. So is it a gag clause? Perhaps. Is it a prohibited one in the sense of this section 204 to the extent we have any type of specificity? I don't know. It's really just the employer, I guess, taking the best of what could be the worst, perhaps. I don't know.
And let's be clear about it. The carrier cannot prohibit a client from going to market, even if they accept that renewal. It's not illegal for them to do it. But technically, as consultants, if we present that to a client, it's unethical for us to say, okay, we're going to take that and we're going to market it anyway and see if we can squeeze a little bit more juice out of,
Oh, so they're almost kind of restricting you as the consultant.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Because you can't market.
Well, that's not very nice. How are you supposed
to? Well, not very nice, and prohibited transaction are sometimes two different things.
Again, best interest of the plan participants. I don't know. Of course, you're not going to tell your employer to go shop you, right? So you said, you don't do no bids, right? You're not playing that
very
game.
Rarely. I like I say, I always present them to the client and I explain to them the risks and the benefits and let them make that choice. What I absolutely won't do is a premium holiday, but that's a whole nother subject.
That's right.
Why don't we take that one on for just now? Because we're in the subject of math, so we may as well stay here for a little bit before moving on to the gag clause attestation. So let's talk about premium holidays for a minute, because they look fabulous, but over time, there can be significant ramifications for a client.
Mm-hmm. So, it's really just the math. So if you think about, let's just use $100,000 a month, that's 1.2 million. Well, if they take a premium holiday for 1 month, they only paid 1.1 million. So in my mind, that's the starting point. But when they come in next year, the carrier is not going to base their renewal increase off of 1.1. They're going to base it off of 1.2. So again, let's say they give them, another 10% increase. That 10% increase is not 10%. It's more like 18%. And if you instead, it would be better in the better interest of the client to negotiate a lower starting premium and pay all 12 months. Unfortunately, the way these are marketed and the way that the carriers put them out there, a lot of consultants see this as the golden ticket to winning a client. Hey, you don't have to pay premium for a month. This is amazing. You should do this. But they're not taking into consideration the impact it can truly have on an employer's budget, because they're forgetting about that 1 month.
Correct.
When next year rolls around.
And the other thing is, it's a premium holiday for everybody. It's not just a premium holiday for the employer. It's a premium holiday for the employee also.
Yes.
So I have a question. When the MLR rebates come back, to the extent they do, one of the options is a premium holiday. That's one that is going to be in every compliance alert you read. Premium holiday as an option. Good option, bad option.
There's nothing wrong with that one.
Nothing wrong with that.
Calculation.
With the right calculation, because you are taking premium that was overpaid and you're crediting it back to the members that are still in the plan.
But it's when they're using it up front as a negotiating thing that it really is detrimental.
So an employer is better off saying, okay, you're going to give us a 1 month premium holiday. We'll just pay 1.1 million through 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not an attractive solution to the carrier?
No, because then their renewal is based on 1.1 and not 1.2.
Mm-hmm.
It's math.
It's math.
These are also the same people who can't run an Excel spreadsheet to figure out the contribution prorated costs, right? So they're really good sometimes and just like third grade other times. I don't get it.
So let's talk about gag clause attestation, because that has a number of people very upset, a number of people very confused, and a whole other group of people going, what on earth is that? And I have to do it by when?
Yeah, so we have this is the prohibition on gag clauses is very powerful, actually, because it can get to your RxDC, it can undercut your NQTL blocks. It's very powerful. So what is a gag clause? It's by statute, a plan or issuer cannot enter into an agreement that directly or indirectly prohibits them from seeing granular point of service, price negotiation, quality of care, all of these data points to their plan, and actually participants and beneficiaries too, nor prevent the employer, plan sponsor, from directing that information to be shared with, and it's de-identified, to be shared with a business associate. Okay, so very, very powerful. Those are the gag clause in a nutshell. So anything that actually, either on its face or in practice, would prevent the plan sponsor, and I'm going to use this mainly in the context of self-insured, fully insured. Yeah, there's the plan and they're the plan sponsor, but in the fully insured context, I look at it as, from the purposes and the viewpoint of this policy, of the transparency, they're renting the plan. They have no control over the plan. They rent it, so to me, less vital there. I don't know why fully insured carriers aren't attesting actually on behalf of all of their plan sponsors. I don't know why fully insured plan sponsors have to do anything anyway, but they do if the plan's not. On the self-insured side, these gag clauses, the attestation, okay, wait, let's back up. Requirement 1, don't enter into the agreement.
But we've already all passed that stage, particularly for this first reporting period.
For this first reporting, it's already happened, right? So in fact, you could have entered into 3 renewals, right? By the time you go to the test. Attestation, I'm going to just say filing is due by December 31st. I'm not going to say attestation because I believe the vast majority of our employers should not attest because they've been gagged, okay, directly or indirectly. I know y'all got the memo that said we are compliant. Here's our certification of compliance. And yet we will do your RxDC reporting for you, where you could see all this stuff. But we can't do our gag clause attestation on your behalf, which is literally like 4 lines of information. Like, it would take 2 seconds to run that same Excel file. No, they won't do that. Why not? I don't know. Probably because they're gagging you, right? I mean, it's really that simple. So if you don't believe me, send a response back, self-insured employers. And I would preface this with, please have a HIPAA program in place. Send a response back and say, hey, in preparation of RxDC reporting, I'd go ahead and like to get my claims feed here. See what they say. Oh, you can't see that? Oh, we're going to NDA you. Oh, we're going to review your request. Oh, you can't send it to a business associate. We'll give it to you for your use only. That is strictly, that was in UHC. UHC said that very thing in RxDC reporting last year. If you want to do this, which we don't think you should, but if you do, we will give it to you. You will sign an NDA and you will submit on your own behalf. You will not have anyone else do it for you. I said, point of fact, that is a gag clause. Thank God the agencies came out a week later and said, yes, that is a gag clause, because I was just guessing. But anyway, that's not okay. So that's power right there. So don't attest if you can't confirm that you're compliant. How do you confirm you're compliant? Make those requests. Look at your contracts. If you have a contract, right? You might not have one, so go find one. And then going forward, I would say put this in your to-do list at renewal, right? Or when you're shopping, let's look at those contracts when we're shopping, especially for scoping out a new vendor or new provider, whatever. Let's see what those agreements say. The goal is that you're supposed to negotiate those things out. If you can't negotiate them out, keep record and documentation. Maybe it is still where your plan needs to go. Like maybe that is your choice, but you've done what you've tried to do. You still can't attest that you've not been gagged, right? You still can't do that, but you now have the supporting documentation to turn into the agencies that you tried.
So we have another question from Erin. She says, more and more level funded bundled plans are entering the market for under 50 employees. These employees don't get granular de-identified claims data. The best we get is a total of monthly claims and total cost of high claimants. If group level funded employers are denied line by line claim data, do we assume that they should file a complaint, not a test?
Absolutely, 100%. File that complaint all day long, every day. Look, the DOL already knows these are fully insured in drag. They just aren't ready to admit it. But they're trying, right? They're trying to get there. They're seeking information. And so, yeah, if you're gonna strap an employer with self-insured responsibilities that you're gonna do on a level funded plan, they need all those responsibilities. So to the extent that they can have a HIPAA something in place, then yeah, they need that line by line. And if they can't, listen, here's the deal. I'm going to say that they've been gagged. You might listen to another webinar that won't even mention the word complaint. They'll only talk about attestation, right? Mm-hmm. Both equally smart people, two different perceptions. And the problem is the agencies gave us one frequently asked question, number 57, I think, in February. They didn't even give us an option to say, no, we are not compliant. Allison, you said earlier today that maybe it's back on the HIOS portal, like they've added a column.
They've added a column. They've added a partial attestation where you can attest to these things and not these things.
So I know you can attest and that was already there. So I have 3 components: PBM, TPA, claims, data analytics, whatever, mental health, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I can attest just for my TPA, but it's not that I'm actually saying I'm not attesting for my PBM. It's just silent. is what I've seen. And that's how it's always been. It's just silent, which could give the assumption that maybe your PBM is attesting on your behalf. It's really not telling the agency anything, honestly. It's kind of pointless. I was hoping to see like a no,
I cannot.
we've been gagged, and here's who's gagging us. Go get them, or whatever, you know. But that's not. I don't think that's the option. No, it's always been where you could just choose which ones you're attesting. So, for example, I consult with a TPA, and I'm like, look, we can attest on behalf of the medical of the TPA. You know, but you need to tell your employer groups that you're not speaking to the PBM. You're not speaking to anything else except this. And so that they understand that if they want to attest or complain on any of those other components, then they can do that. But yeah, complain.
Yeah.
And force the agency to tell us what I think is a gag clause. They might come back and say that I'm just completely wrong. I doubt it. They might not say anything. I don't think I'm completely wrong on this.
We've started asking our vendor partners for gag clause attestations up front, and we have gotten some. And I've been very pleasantly surprised by that.
That's really good. That is very good.
It is by far the minority.
It is. And there are more transparent PBMs are coming out. And I mean, transparent, like not cutting the broker into a script fee. It's like, this is it, right? There's no whack or MAC or whatever. It's like, no, per script fee. Like they're based in the data feed every month showing 100% rebates. Go where we said they were going to go, to the employer, right? The offset of it's going to pay the admin cost, really.
I'm gonna throw something in there. There are many buckets of revenue in a PBM contract, and in order to be compliant, you need your PBM contract to clearly define the fiduciary responsibility to the plan, and that you have complete transparency and you can audit down to what the pharmacy was paid. Because if you can't do that, you do not have complete transparency. And I get a lot of, who cares? And then we have the 10 AWP structure conversation, which is not the subject for today. But if you do not have a contract that says that your vendor is acting with fiduciary responsibility to you, and that should be clinical, not just financial, by the way, also a conversation for another day. Clinical and financial fiduciary responsibility to the employer, and we will open the kimono and let you see what we pay the pharmacy, because I can tell you a whole lot of money is made between what the pharmacy's paid and what the plan is built. And if you can't audit, you can't see it.
Well, and that brings up the audit thing. What is an audit? Well, I would read some of those things. You said, Allison, you said line by line. That to me is an audit. That's not how audits are defined in these contracts. The way audits are defined in the contracts is what is going on with Kraft v. Aetna. 167 cherry-picked claims over the past 2 years where we've paid you millions of dollars.
Correct.
All of that could have been uncovered with the RxDC reporting.
Correct. And the other thing is, most of those contracts say in item A1A, we are not fiduciary to your plan.
Okay.
You have to negotiate that out. And if there may be a reason you can't, sometimes there is, you better have a reason.
Right. Oh, that's huge. That's huge.
And your PBM contract needs to be more than 2 or 3 pages, because I've seen them run the gauntlet. I mean, they need to really spell out what they're paying, who they're paying, why they're paying, what the restrictions on are, who else is getting paid in this scenario. So whether it's a per script fee, or it's a per member per month fee, I mean, it better be crystal freaking clear.
Well, that consortium thing, I think, and it just made news on a LinkedIn post, right? So it goes back to the comp disclosure, and whose responsibility? Is that the broker's responsibility to call it out on their comp? Is it the PBM's responsibility to call it out in their contract? yes, I would say yes to both. But it might be that neither are doing it. So meanwhile, the rising cost of care.
So Nick is asking, what steps should you take if your carrier TPA advises they will attest on your behalf?
So I think that could be, to me, that's good if they're attesting on your behalf. Well, attesting on your behalf that they are compliant, right? So one, get it in writing, which is get it in the contract, which is the same thing that the agency said on the machine readable files. If your TPA, PBM, and PBM's machine readable file number 3, it's back. It really never left. We knew it didn't have the same information. Agencies know it now too. So get those out there. Have the contract say, we will host these. We will update these. If something goes wrong, we will indemnify you. If these carriers, TPAs, PBMs are so, even if they won't attest, but yet to their compliance, see if they'll indemnify you for not just non-compliance, don't be so narrow-minded, the litigation that can come from an attestation of compliance, which is undercutting a defense from a class action or a plaintiff wanting to see their information.
Very good advice.
Well, we could talk about all this for hours, but we are coming to the end of our hour. Thank you so much. I mean, literally, this could go on for the rest of the afternoon. But I think that this is, I think we have found, a sweet spot for our mixing measures, Allison.
I think we do too.
We can go down the compliance rabbit hole on lots of different areas, and we will probably need to revisit some of these topics individually in the future. But thank everybody for coming on today. It was fabulous. It was fabulous having you, Jennifer.
Thank you
for inviting me, Allison.
Thank you for joining me. And thank you for joining us, Jennifer.
Absolutely.
And we are coming up at the hour, so we will close it up. If you have any other questions, drop them in the chat and we will answer them for you. And reach out to Jennifer for some of the granular questions, because Nancy and I know a lot, but not as much as Jennifer.
You'll know how to Excel, though. Spreadsheet.
We do. We're good with math.
So thank you very much, and everybody have a terrific rest of your day.